There's a cost for caring because the same heart that fills with joy when we help others is the same one that can also be injured in the process. And this is what I want to talk about with you today, the cost of caring. The Pitt episode 13 had a scene where Dr. Robby broke down, and I empathized so strongly with him in that moment, especially the part where he said that he was going to remember this loss long after others had forgotten. I want to talk about this scene because it's a very important part of being in a helping profession, how we process loss. As a board-certified chaplain, I'm going to give you my reflections on this scene, and as a warning, some of what we're going to discuss may be triggering as I talk about processing loss. I'm looking forward to reading your reactions to this scene from the Pit, so please comment below, and if you found this content interesting, please like and subscribe. Let's get into it. If you've been watching HBO Max's The Pit as long as I have, you'll know that we're approaching the end of the world's longest shift. And honestly, at this point, I'm wondering if this show, because it's so realistic, has caused some people to second guess whether they even want to enter into the medical field, or if it's drawing people in. This show billed itself as the most realistic medical drama ever made, and I must say, it really is realistic. Now, my only complaint is that there isn't a professional chaplain on staff. Every hospital is going to have a spiritual care department or staff chaplains, and 100% I can tell you that a chaplain at some point in this long shift would have been present throughout some part of it. Now, apart from that, I've been waiting to see if Dr. Robby was going to break under all of this pressure. And the reason why I say that is because so far, he's come in contact with numerous moments that have really challenged him, and we're beginning to see the impact of the stress that he's gone through. And sure enough, it happened in this episode. Let's watch this clip.
Exactly it. No, I didn't. And I don't know how many people I've helped today, but I can tell you every other person who has died. There was a man named Mr. Spencer who died in front of his children, and an 18-year-old who was brain dead from a fentanyl overdose, and a guy with a heart condition, and a little girl who drowned trying to save her sister. And I'm gonna remember Leah long after you've forgotten her. I'm sorry. Sorry, you gotta go, man. You gotta go. You gotta go.
Wait, Robby, wait.
This is such a powerful clip. Even now, as he says, I'm going to remember this long after you've forgotten, this really hits so close to home. That part right there really caught me off guard because of how realistic it is. Professional chaplains and even religious leaders in general were often called to be close to death and dying. And it's because our work is sometimes called liminal. And what that means is that we're in the in-between. Now, one reason for that is because death has rituals associated with it. Now, because we, as humanity, we sense that something profoundly impactful has happened when someone passes away, we sense that it requires a moment of reverence. So in rituals, someone leads that moment, and clergy and chaplain are typically the ones that fill that role. So when there's a death, we, as in professional chaplains and clergy in general, are called to provide support. And in that moment of support, it feels like we're not quite part of the staff who's paying their respects, and we're certainly not part of the family. We're somewhere in between, somewhere between life and death, somewhere which is a liminal space. But what got me about what he said was that he's going to remember long after everyone else forgets. And that's exactly what it feels like to occupy this liminal space. Once the ritual is complete, people move on, and that's understandable and that's okay. But we, those who are in the liminal space, end up being keepers of memory. And I must say, not all losses impact all providers the same. For Dr. Robby, throughout this season, we've gotten glimpses into the vulnerable parts or the losses that he's had in the past that continue to impact him even in the present moment. One example from the debrief scene that I talked about in a previous video, you can hear his voice as some of his past ends up coming up in the moment. Let's listen.
I did my residency at Big Charity in New Orleans. And day one, I got a kid, 5-year-old boy, accidentally shot by his brother, playing with dad's gun. Worried he was gonna get in trouble, right up until he coded and died.
You can hear it in his voice, how his grief surfaces to the top. And he is so right. In working as both a member of the clergy and as a chaplain, I must say that the types of losses that tend to do this to us as providers tend to be sudden, unexpected, and unnatural, and some even violent. And these are the memories that, like he said, you just want to place them somewhere because they are difficult to bear. And if we don't process these losses, they become unresolved, and that's what I assess is going on in this scene. Unresolved grief is when an impactful loss occurs, but for whatever reason, we just push past it instead of addressing it. Now, all that means is that we have to be intentional about how we approach self-care. And that's the thing about grief, is that if we don't address it and if we don't process it, it tends to remind us that it's there, and sometimes at the worst possible moments, as we saw in the first clip. It can even create a type of distortion in our thinking and in our perception when our unresolved parts of our story come in contact with another situation that bears similar resemblance. So it becomes a type of distortion that can impact our thinking and our processing and our provision of care. I thought this show did an excellent job of using the visuals of the children's room to make that point. Each of the 3 moments that I saw Dr. Robby's character in and around the room's design, it was typically followed by moments where his window of tolerance or his ability to stay present in the moment was being challenged. And I love that visual depiction. Finally, we see his window of tolerance close in the first scene that I shared with you. When processing loss, I understand that everyone grieves differently, and grief is like a story within a story. And sometimes as we process loss as providers, sometimes it's helpful to have someone bear witness to that story. When working with grief, finding meaning in these experiences through the lens of one's personal sense of connection to the transcendent can also be a helpful way to process. The human spirit and capacity to care for others is powerful, and I see it firsthand every single day. Being a source of care and support for others is deeply meaningful and it's rewarding. But over the course of my time working as a chaplain clinician or professional chaplain, I've learned that in order to take care of others, I have to also be present for myself. I have tremendous respect and admiration for our providers, and I'm humbled every single day by the work that they do. If you found this video interesting and informative, please like and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for being you, and thank you for honoring me with your presence.